Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to hold a clicker, I'm going to hold the recording thing. This will be a test of my dexterity on a Friday morning. Thank you all so much for coming here today to listen to me speak and share my story, really of how I ended up doing all the things that I'm doing. Yeah, hustle crew, product hunt, non-tech tech. I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no, I don't get enough sleep. But you know, like all millennials, unless I'm doing at least 3 jobs, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford a mortgage. So hey ho, here we are. So honesty, yeah, I think honesty was a very fitting theme for my first Creative Mornings talk, because it's honesty that really led me to where I am today. And that is being honest with myself, being honest about my values, what I really wanted to do with my life, what I felt was my purpose, but also being honest about the world around me, being honest about the fact that the industry I operated in was not equal, being honest about the fact that I feel that I've not really experienced a meritocracy, more of a mirror-tocracy. And I think one thing that I always encourage everyone in my community to do, is be honest with themselves, be honest with the people around them, and be willing to confront those difficult truths. I think unless we do that, we're not really going to be able to change the world for the better. So yeah, just before I kind of jump into my story, it's a story of honesty divided into 4 parts. So that's what I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about. I thought I'd just tell you a bit more about what Hustle Crew and Non-Tech Tech actually do. So Hustle Crew is a company I started a couple of years ago with a mission to make tech more inclusive. I'd worked at companies like Groupon, Amazon, Hotel Tonight, and looking at the org structure and looking at the leadership, I sort of realized, there isn't anyone that looks like me up there. There isn't even anyone who's a woman up there. And I kind of thought, that's very odd, because women are half of the population, and technology is used by everyone, and that technology should be designed by people that can empathize with the experiences of everyone. So through talks and training, Hustle Crew is supporting underestimated young people to help them get into the tech industry. And I started Non-Tech Tech to help shatter misconceptions. I'm going to do an exercise. Okay, close your eyes and think of someone who is techie. Okay, raise your hand if that person looks like me. Yeah, exactly. So the reason why I started Non-Tech Tech was to prove that you can be someone like me who studied social sciences at uni and still get a tech job. So yeah, that's pretty much what we do. And then Product Hunt, if you don't know, we're building the best place to discover and share your favorite products. We're a user-generated content community. We're based in San Francisco. And yeah, I'm just working on growing that community with an inclusive focus. So my 4-part story on honesty. Allow me to go to the next slide. Okay, like all good stories, it starts at the beginning. So yeah, for those that didn't read my bio, I was born into a very multicultural household. So maybe I was destined to advocate for inclusion. My dad's from Nigeria, and my mom's from the Philippines. They met in the Philippines. In the 70s or something. There probably weren't that many mixed race couples back then, but you know, when you're growing up, you think what you're experiencing is normal. That's why we all have therapy later. But yeah, so there I was, you know, growing up in my multicultural home, exposed to, you know, African food and African values, exposed to Asian food and Asian values. I was in a melting pot. I'm also, you know, a third culture kid. Hands up if you're familiar with that definition or know that. Okay, yeah, great. How would you define third culture kid?
Oh, wow, okay. Hi.
Putting you on the spot there.
I would describe it as someone who, like, when they get asked where are you from, it becomes very, like, how much time do you have kind of answer.
That's my girl.
And you've probably lived in different countries, and you're kind of just from the world. You're just, home is where your heart is.
Thank you, Bria. Great definition, give her a clap. She wasn't expecting that at all. And she was absolutely right. When I looked it up on Wikipedia earlier, third culture kid is defined as someone that grows up in a country that their parents are not from, or spends a lot of time of their upbringing in a country that's not their passport's country. And I kind of fit both of those boxes. I was born in Washington, D.C., but when I was 8 years old, my dad, who's a senior economist at the IMF, got promoted to country director at the IMF. So I found myself on a plane moving to Tanzania, and like in a country that didn't have McDonald's. I was very upset. I was an American brainwashed child. I lived in Tanzania for 3 years. I was going to international school. There were people from Middle East, like Scandinavia, the Far East. I was like, this is awesome. I'm learning different cultures. I'm learning different languages. And then I went to Kenya, and I was like, this is also awesome. I'm meeting more really interesting international people. Then I came to boarding school in the UK, and I was like, oh, okay. This is different, but that's cool. And yeah, so, the reason I got sent to boarding school in the UK was because my dad was very education focused. Hands up immigrant parents. Okay, yeah, it's just like, get A's or die. And it's really funny because when I then got to boarding school, I started to learn about people who like weren't afraid of their parents. Like I just thought everyone was afraid of their dad. I honestly thought that that's what the case was, because I was afraid of my dad, and I was like, okay, my dad sent me here. I need to study really, really, really hard so that I can get into uni and become an economist like him and change the world through macroeconomic policy. That is my destiny. That is my destiny on earth. So, that's what I did. I went to the library, I studied hard, I became a prefect. I remember in my final year of secondary school, I'm just trying to tell you how much of a nerd I am, okay? I would wake up early before breakfast and fit in like 2 hours at the library, and then I would have a day full of revision. So, that Nigerian parenting, that stuff works. But yeah, then I got to university. I'm just going to, again, by show of hands, who thought they were really smart until they got to uni? Oh, I'm so glad I'm not the only one. So, I found myself at London School of Economics, studying economics, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the dream that I've spent the last 18 years building up to. And I was terrified. I'd never really had imposter syndrome before, if I'm honest. Even though I had quite an unusual background and was always thrown into new environments, I developed certain resilience that people who move around a lot do. But then I found myself at LSE completely out of my depth. And the most terrifying thing was that I started to realize there are a lot of parts of economics I actually didn't enjoy. I didn't like stats, I didn't like econometrics. I was far more interested in writing essays and reading philosophy books than solving my problem sets. And that was really tough, because the one vision, mission, set of values that my whole identity had been shaped upon was sort of dissolving between my fingers. And being an adult, I couldn't really just turn to my parents and ask for a new life plan. I mean, my parents still want me to be an economist, so let's not go there. But I just suddenly thought, what do I want? And that was a really, really difficult question to answer at the age of 21. Every time I listened to the voice in my head, it was like my dad saying, get back to books, what are you doing? And so really being at university was the first time I had to be honest with myself about what I was seeking and what my version of success looked like. Because my version of success was not my dad's, or my mom's, or anyone around me. I just hadn't found it yet. So I kind of had to start that journey. But it was cool because, I was graduating from one of the top universities in the world, so I was going to be earning 6 figures in a few years, right? Wrong. I don't know if anyone else graduated around 2008, 9, 10. Yeah? Okay. Not the best time to enter the job market after a financial crisis. So suddenly I thought, okay, great. So not only am I not sure what I want to do with my life, this huge investment that I've made in my education has also kind of amounted to nothing because the economy's messed up. And also the people who we're supposed to respect and admire are the ones that messed it up. I was very confused, and I was like, right, okay, I need to look to a new system and a new world for validation. But where would I find it? Chapter 2. Interestingly enough, I found it in a film. Hands up if you've watched The Social Network. All right. So I was in a very boring job in the city. I was just grateful that I had work, to be honest. I mean, things were collapsing all around me. I was learning about subprimes and credit default swaps and goodness knows what else. When I watched this film called The Social Network, and I was like, that's what I thought growing up was supposed to be. I thought you were supposed to go to uni, meet amazing people, come up with these groundbreaking ideas, basically get rich and then, be ballers. And I was like, that's what I worked hard for. That's what I slaved away in the library for. I want that. I want a piece of that pie. So I was like, I gotta get into tech. So I sort of worked my network. As it turned out, some of my friends from LSE were already working at this company called Groupon. It was an American company that had an office in London. It was growing really fast and they were hiring people. And I remember just showing up to my interview and being like, I'm literally just gonna lie as much as possible to get this job because sometimes, you gotta fake it till you make it. That was my creative interpretation of it. But yeah, he was like, oh, so how much do you know about tech? I was like, loads, obviously. I've got a smartphone. I think I had a BlackBerry at the time. Glad I didn't show that to him. But I talked about other skills I developed in previous roles. I had biz dev skills, I had sales skills, I knew how to write an email, come on. So yeah, I got the job. I mean, how much do you really need to know? So I got the job and I was like, right, well, there's one skill that's never failed me, and that's working really hard. So I worked hard. Within 8 months, I was promoted. I was 24 and I was managing a team, and I was like, I'm really inexperienced, but whatever, this is tech, let's run with it. And it was cool. I really got to learn a lot. I got to, roll out a KPI structure. I got to launch new countries. And the best thing about Groupon was we were growing so fast. My team literally went from 10 people to 50 people in less than a year. Have you ever worked at a company that grows at that scale? I mean, it will probably never even happen again in my lifetime, realistically, because it was tiring. But I'm glad I had that opportunity. And being in London, growing at that size, meant we were surrounded by the most colorful group of people you can imagine. We had people with red hair, pink hair, hijabis, piercings, tats, you name it, whatever age, whatever shade, they were there. And then one day, the best LinkedIn message of my life came through from Amazon, asking if I wanted to go work for them for 15K more, and I was like, no brainer. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. Found myself working at Amazon, and I was like, oh, interesting. I just know someone else that works at Amazon, clearly. When you're a consumer, right, Amazon is amazing. It's like everything's so quick and easy, and they make my life so great. When you're on the inside, you're like, oh, Amazon's really dry. And it really was. I was really excited about having the staff discount. Less excited about the fact that there was no one that reported into Jeff Bezos. I would literally look at the org chart. There was no one that reported into him that was a woman. And then the level below that also had no one that was a woman. And I was like, what kind of message does that send to someone like me, who is a woman, in Amazon, about whether or not there's a place for me at the top of this organization? So I was like, okay, right, tech, you're not what you used to be. I need to get more women in here. I need to get, some kind of inclusion thing going. And the first version of that in my mind was, I'll go in early stage. Yeah, I'll go to an earlier stage company, and then I can hire more women, and I can play a bigger role in getting women involved. And that's how I ended up at the company before Hustle Crew. And that was even worse. I'll just give you some examples of the horrible things that I experienced in that environment that made me realize, yeah, tech is not so great sometimes. Once we had an open position, and all of the male employees decided to Instagram stalk the candidates, find the hottest ones, go through their holiday photos, and then bring them in even though they weren't qualified, just that they can meet them and potentially ask them out on a date. That is a real life story. So I was like, why am I policing sexist behavior when I've been hired to do business development and build relationships and make money for this company? This isn't my job. Once I was working away at my desk when someone came up from behind me and started squeezing my hair and being like, oh my God, your hair is like a stress ball. And I was like, no, it's not. But then he wouldn't stop touching my hair. This was also before the Solange song came out, and I could just blast that constantly. So people did not know the struggle until that song. But yeah, so I was just like, okay, right, enough is enough. And then I was like, not only am I dealing with stuff that when I then go to the pub and tell my mates about it, lots of my friends are guys, they're like, that never happens to me. And lots of them are white, and they're like, that's so weird. And I was like, well, you don't look like me, and maybe people get treated based on how they look Is that potentially a reality in our society? But yeah, I started being more honest about what I was experiencing at work. I wanted to create empathy with my peers. I wanted them to understand the things that other people like me in their offices were going through. And then I also started being more honest about my compensation, because I realized that all of the people that I graduated with who were men were earning way more than me. Like, once I started being really honest, and by this point some of them were working in tech as well, I was like, you do biz dev as well. How much are you on? And I was shocked to find that some of them were earning like 2, 3x what I was earning, like literally 2 to 3 times my base amount. So, when I was done picking my jaw up off the floor, I was like, but how? And they're like, oh, well, you probably didn't negotiate when you got your offer. I was like, oh, yes, I did. And they're like, oh, well, you probably don't ask for a pay rise at regular intervals. I was like, oh, yeah, I do. And they're like, oh, that's so weird. And I was like, perhaps people react differently to men and women. Maybe we did the same things, but just reached different outcomes, because I am me and they are them. And the funny thing about that conversation was not only the realization that we were on very different playing fields, also the realization that all of that advice around negotiating and how to earn more and ask for what I'm worth was not taught to us at university. Okay, I want you again to close your eyes and think of the best, most useful piece of careers advice you have ever been given. Okay, now I want you to raise your hands if you were given that at school or university. Look around the room, everyone. That's messed up. That's so messed up. Think of how much money we pay for school and university. Why are they not preparing us for the job market? Sigh. So, I quit my job. I was like, you know what? Everyone's talking about be the change you want to see in the world, getting it tattooed on their arm on their gap year in Hindi or whatever, posting it on Instagram. Who's actually doing it? Like, who's actually doing it? Other than me. Yeah. So, I quit my job. And I was like, okay, quit my job. I'm going to do something about the tech industry being extremely unfair. Around this time, I also started watching Black Mirror, right? Just hands up, who likes that shit? Charlie Brooker, yeah. I started to think long term, right? What are the consequences of having a tech industry that isn't inclusive, right? What's the first thing you look at when you wake up? Smartphone. Last thing you look at when you go to bed? Smartphone. In between that time, you're on another screen. You're depending on technology, you're giving your data away to these companies. Now, look around the room. We're a colorful bunch of people. The people in those tech companies, they don't look like us. The people designing those phones, building those products, they don't look like us. The people parsing through our data, creating algorithms that are going to make decisions that replace human jobs in the future, they're a very homogenous group of people. Now, historically, it's been a pretty homogenous group of people controlling the world, shaping the world, and we don't like the world. So what happens if we keep letting that happen? I'll tell you what happens. Black Mirror goes from being a fiction show to a documentary. And I am not happy with that. So yeah, I was like, what can I do? There's a lot of valuable information that women need to know to help them succeed in tech and help them get further in tech. I'll start writing a book. I started writing my book. I was like, how do I know that the knowledge in this book is useful? I'm going to do some talks and workshops. So I started doing some talks and workshops. And the results were amazing. The first people that came to my workshop within a few months had negotiated pay rises or negotiated new jobs or started their own companies, started their own businesses, taken that leap of faith and invested in themselves, which is incredible. But then I had to think of a way to make a business sustainable, right? I was on my own as an entrepreneur for the first time. And that was the hard part. Even though women and other underrepresented people who wanted that career support were readily available to get support from mentors, to come to the career skills training, companies just didn't buy that idea at all. I'd go into organizations that say they want to improve their diversity stats, increase the number of underestimated people. But when I actually asked them to pay for my work, they were like, what? Oh, no, that's weird. It was really, really tough. B2C, great. B2B, not so great. I started talking to investors. And funnily enough, lots of them thought that the problem I was trying to solve wasn't big enough. apparently like career support for women is too small a market, even though we're 52% of the world. That probably tells you all you need to know about venture capital. But yeah, I just thought I would put some like sobering stats up here because, you know, I do that sometimes. 17% of tech startups have a female founder. That's like less than 1 in 5. Over 50% of employees at Google and Apple are white. Raise your hands if you use Google or Apple products. There are some black people raising their hands, some brown people raising their hands too. Gender pay gap. If the current pace of change doesn't accelerate, it's going to take more than 100 years to close the gap. Okay, I know the first person that's going to live to 150 has theoretically been born, but I'm not hopeful about that. I'm really not. So yeah, you know, we need to wake up to that difficult truth, that tech isn't where it should be, and tech isn't the only industry that has that problem. However, it's not all doom and gloom, guys. Final part. In the 2 years since I've started doing my work, it's been incredible to see what all the Hustle Crew alumni are up to. They've gone on to start their own companies, they've gone on to raise funding, they've gone on to start their own communities and share their careers, journeys, and tips with people younger than them. You know, I decided to return to full-time work after bootstrapping for a year because I live in London and it's very expensive. And I realized that I was maybe a bit early with my vision, but it doesn't mean that the vision dies. It means that the vision just changes. And I'm so grateful to be a part of the Product Hunt community. The whole reason I took that job was because Ryan Hoover, the founder, was able to do what I want to do, build a community and run it full time and turn it into a business. And in the time that I've worked there, I've been able to turn his community into a more inclusive one and get more women participating in it, launching their products, using the services and tools. I continue to advocate for inclusion. I was recently invited to City Hall to speak with the Deputy Mayor about the fact that Black women are often excluded from lots of the entrepreneurial initiatives that the City of London are investing in. Yeah, and I guess what I wanted to say is all of these difficult truths and moments of honesty have led me to realize that, you know, what's my purpose, what's my drive? It's not really about me. I feel most inspired when I'm helping others. And so finally, if you're interested or inspired to help, you can always join us, be a mentor. And yeah, think about what honest truths you need to ask yourself so that you can be more honest with yourself. And maybe in a month's time, it'll be you on this stage. Thank you.